What's going on, everyone? So, we need to keep an eye on the Sacramento Kings because depending on what Sacramento does right now, could potentially give some options for the Los Angeles Lakers. So, well, not just the Lakers, but teams, period, right? So, Sacramento right now is trying to work out a sign and trade for Jonathan Kuminga. Problem is they don't want to give up a Keon Ellis. They don't want to give up a Keegan Murray. They don't want to give up any of the pieces that they view as like the foundation for this team. They want to add a Jonathan Kuminga to those guys, those young players that they're growing, developing, be a piece, be a component, right? So what that means is they're going to send out whatever they're going to send out. And the Warriors aren't really super interested in some of the things, but they might not have a choice. Kuminga's kind of handcuffing them. They're in a tough spot. But the Sacramento Kings are hard capped at the first apron because of the sign and trade for Dennis Schroeder, right? Well, because of the sign and trade for Dennis Schroeder, they now, if they trade for Jonathan Kuminga, are going to have to shed salary, and they might have to shed a lot of salary because they are $7.5 million under that first apron. Jonathan Kuminga is making probably in that 20 to 30 million range is probably what they're going to have to pay him. And the players that they're trying to send out is Dario Saric as well as Devin Carter, right? Well, here's the thing though. Those guys combined are only making like $10 million, right? Maybe you throw in another like kind of salary filler or whatever, but still like they might have to shed anywhere from like, let's say they send out, $12 million or $10 million, right? And then Kaminga's makes $25 million, right? Okay, well, with the $7.5 million, they would still end up being basically $8 million over what they need to be, potentially even more, $10 million, depending on what Kaminga does. If Kaminga's $30 million a year, then they're $20 million. They need to send out 13. They need to trim basically $13 million a year off their books, which means that they're probably going to have to do what we've seen teams like, Milwaukee and Phoenix have done, which is they're going to have to buy out and stretch, right? Waive and stretch one of their guys, and that's likely DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine, right? Now, again, this all depends on if they end up trading for Kaminga. Because if they don't land Kaminga, then it won't matter. But if they land Kaminga, they're going to have to figure something out, right? Or they're going to have to pull off some type of trade in order to unload guys. The thing is, though, is like they're not. Before I start, let me say this because I know people are going to be like, good, go get Keon Ellis. They do not want to trade Keon Ellis. They want to keep Keon Ellis. Again, they're trying to build a more competent roster. The idea is like Dennis Schroeder at the point, Keon at the 2, probably Kaminga at the 4, Sabonis at the 5, and then like a LaVine or DeMar at the 3. That's probably how this is going to shape up, right? You kind of have your 2 point of attack guards. You have your scoring bucket getter kind of wing. You got your Sabonis center that can kind of be the operating guy, and then Jonathan Kuminga would probably slot in at the 4 or the 3, however they structure it. Right? That's kind of what they want to do. So Keegan Murray, they don't want to get rid of. Keon Ellis, they don't want to get rid of. But also the Lakers don't have the salary to just absorb somebody, right? Like they could be like, hey, we'll just give you Keon Ellis. Lakers would have to go find a salary dump trade, pull off that salary dump trade, and then go and absorb Keon. Like, it's a lot, right? Like, so, and Sacramento's not just going to give them to you. Like, you're going to have to give up assets, but you'd have to give up assets in the potential salary dump trade. So, unless the Lakers pull off another trade that clears, $10 million off their books to where now they have $10 million to go sign somebody, then realistically speaking, you're not going to be able to do necessarily what you need to do, right? So, Lakers would have to kind of figure that stuff out. But that doesn't mean that the Lakers won't be able to get somebody off of a buyout, right? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to buy out the big guys. It really boils down to what salary, what contract is Jonathan Kuminga making? If he makes $15 million a year, then they're fine, right? Like if he's getting $15 million a year, then they'll be able to send out the $10 million in salary, and then they'll still be like $2.5 million under the cap in order to do that, right? However, he's probably not going to make that. He wants $30 million. I don't know if he'll get $30 million, but he wants it. And if he does, then like I said, they're going to have to clear basically $13 million off their books to keep them under the apron. It might end up being more than that because they're going to have to fill out a roster, especially if they're sending out 2 or 3 guys, 2 for 1 type thing. So they're going to need to shed potentially a lot of salary. So the only way to do that would be to buy out a DeMar DeRozan or a Zach LaVine. Now, my guess would be it would be DeMar DeRozan because Zach LaVine, it makes more, like literally double. So where DeMar DeRozan, they'd only have to buy out $50 million, and plus he'd probably take a discount. And not all of it is guaranteed. Like certain amounts are guaranteed based on like what he accomplishes. Like if he makes an all-star team and stuff like that. So I definitely think that they could convince DeMar to take a discount in order to be bought out, like maybe take $15 million less to be bought out, and then he could go and explore a team. Zach LaVine, again, you're talking, you'd have to buy out like $110 million and then stretch that. Where DeMar, you might only have to buy out like $40 million, and then you can kind of stretch that over each year and, basically shed, $20 million off your books each year for them to bring in Kaminga. So DeMar DeRozan is probably the most likely candidate is my guess. Because, again, he's also older. He's probably going to want to go to a veteran. Also, he's probably coming off the bench, right? If they go and do this, unless they're bringing Keon Ellis and Murray off the bench, right? So are they going to go Malik Monk, Keon Ellis, and Murray off the bench? Because they got Dennis Schroeder, right? So, like, they would have to kind of figure out their lineup. Because, I mean, what would make the most sense is, like, Dennis Schroeder. That's why they're trying to trade Malik Monk, right? But Dennis Schroeder, go with Dennis Schroeder, Keon Ellis, Zach LaVine, Jonathan Kuminga, and Domantas Sabonis. And then you have Keegan Murray, right? You still have Malik Monk off the bench, right? You have offense and now your starting unit's just better defensively. You got Schroeder and Keon who can be your point of attack defensive pieces. Zach LaVine can get in and buy in defensively when he's engaged. Jonathan Kuminga, same thing. Sabonis would kind of be your main liability. So Sacramento, that's kind of my guess. Right, so if they keep DeMar DeRozan, right? Yeah, you could buy out LaVine and bring in DeMar, but again, it's more money. It's more like it doesn't make as much sense if you're Sacramento. And DeMar probably, like, if you're gonna bring DeMar off the bench, you're probably not gonna be happy about that. You'd probably be like, dude, if I'm gonna come off the bench, I'd rather come off the bench for a contending team rather than a team that we're lucky to make the play in. Right, so I even think from a DeMar standpoint, you probably would want that. Now, if I'm the Lakers, I don't hate the idea of DeMar DeRozan, but only if he's willing to come in off the bench. Like if he's willing to play a sixth-man role off the bench, sign me up, right? Because, again, it was a lot of the same idea with Bradley Beal. Now, Bradley Beal's a better three-point shooter and better off-ball guy, but DeMar DeRozan is like your six-man bucket getter. Right? The guy can still go get buckets with anybody, right? So, and he'd be getting him on a vet minimum. So low risk, high reward. And he's coming off of a great season last year and still ultra efficient, right? So, DeMar DeRozan's a guy that I'd absolutely love to have. And again, if you're going to trade Austin Reeves at some point, it'd be nice to kind of have DeMar as like a safety net just in case. I still wouldn't want to move him to the starter because I think Luka and DeMar in your backcourt defensively is probably worse than, Luka and Austin Reeves in your backcourt defensively. But, you'd have a little, like, worst case, you could just go that, you'd be fine. But beyond that, like, because the problem is most of the other guys don't make the side, and they're not going to waive and stretch Sabonis. Like, that's silly because you have, like, you could trade. There's teams that would trade for Sabonis, right? Even if you're just kind of almost giving them away. Like, there's teams that give you a first for Sabonis, right? So, like, even if you needed to get off of Sabonis and get off of a good amount of money, like, there's teams that would take Sabonis. LaVine, you're not going to be able to trade. DeMar, you're not going to be able to trade, right? Keon Ellis, you could definitely try. I mean, there's teams that would just absorb Keon Ellis into the salary. But again, they don't want to trade. If you're going to do that, you might as well do that in the Kaminga trade, right? Because you're just going to, give away somebody? Like, maybe you could convince the Warriors to give you an asset if you're giving up Keon Ellis. Same thing with Murray, right? And then all the other guys aren't making enough to kind of clear off the salary that you need in order to make it work and make it make sense. So if you're the Sacramento Kings, your only real path is a DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine. That's really your only two ways. Which again, either I wouldn't mind starting Zach LaVine, right? And I'll talk about Zach LaVine in a later day. And I'm back, baby. For those that get it. But no, in all seriousness, right? If you could get either of those guys off of a buyout, sign me up all day. Even DeMar DeRozan, even at his age. Again, he's coming off of an excellent season. Right? Like, if you can get him that cheap, where you're paying, because remember, you already used your biannual. So he's not getting a biannual, he's getting a vet minimum. And he's always wanted to go to LA, and he's already getting paid. So if he's ever going to go to LA, this is your chance. And a team like the Clippers doesn't make sense, right? Because the Clippers aren't going to, maybe he goes to like the Warriors or something like that. But even then, like, I don't know, does that really make sense? Right? Like, so it's one of those things. It'll be interesting. Like I said, just keep an eye on Sacramento. All of this is predicated on them actually landing Jonathan Kuminga and what price and whatnot. Right? But Jonathan Kuminga is expected to get 20 plus million. So they're going to have to waive and stretch somebody, or they're going to have to do a salary dump trade. Maybe it's, Malik Monk. Maybe a team would be willing to take on Malik Monk. That is a possibility. Maybe a team's like, hey, we'll take, you need to clear how much? You need to clear 10 million. Okay, we'll send you an $8 million guy and we'll take Malik Monk. Right? And, a team might do it just because they can get Malik Monk for free and give you a scorer off the bench. Sure, maybe. But we'll see. Anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. It helps me not. It's me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.